Hey guys, it's Rebecca Mara here, and I want to talk a little bit today about the anxious and preoccupied attachment style. And I'll back up and just say here's why I think working with the attachment systems is so important. One, after working with thousands of clients, I see how all of their all of their nervous system patterns are based off of attachment stuff for the most part. There are things that happen, later in life, but mostly it's our childhood experiences that really shape how people experience life in the day to day. So, nervous system patterns or nervous system dysregulation is so connected to attachment work. And the person that I trained with is Diane Poole Heller. I love her personality because she's so upbeat. She really believes in people and their healing, and she likes to orient toward how do we create more secure attachment, which is what we're all going for. It's not just, what box to put ourselves in. It helps to understand all of these parts of us, but it's really about how do we come back into regulation. How do we come back into an even more secure connection with the people around us and our partners? And I personally just love that. It's so much more important to orient toward that than just pathologizing or, analyzing or putting ourselves in boxes. So the anxious or preoccupied attachment style is one that I feel the most protective of in a way, just because they're so sensitive and so easily activated. There's this constant anxiety, thus the name, but there's a distress that's always kind of happening. So in anxious attachment, the signal cry, which is like, a baby crying for help, like they're crying so the parent is supposed to come and soothe them because they can't regulate on their own. The signal cry of people, even into their adulthood, is always on. So it's really hard to soothe them in relationship. And there was an experiment that they did on pigeons, for better or worse, but what they found is that intermittent caregiving or inconsistent caregiving or nourishment is what creates this constant anxiety, and the attachment system doesn't really turn off. So what happened with these pigeons is that they intermittently gave them pellets. So every 3 times they would press a bar, this pellet would be dispensed, and then they would have food or a treat. And because of the inconsistency that they could, every time they hit the bar, a pellet wouldn't come out. They couldn't figure out when it was going to be distributed. And so they became really activated constantly and were constantly pressing this bar in order to get a pellet. And at some point, they didn't even care about the pellet anymore. They were just hitting the bar. And so there's this distress that happens when love or care isn't consistent. And that's what happened for the children that grew up with parents that help create, unintentionally, these anxious attachment styles. And some examples would be like a parent that's really conditional, like they're very loving and close and connective, but if you aren't the person that they want you to be in that moment, or you're not pleasing them somehow, or you didn't follow the rules that they wanted, they would detach and disconnect. So I know someone that had a parent that was pretty consistent, most secure enough, there enough, but all of a sudden she would give him a silent treatment and he would be really overwhelmed and he wouldn't know why. And so this creates this background anxiety around, like, am I going to be connected? Am I not going to be connected? And so when there's insecurity in a relationship or instability, it can be really anxiety provoking, and they can get a little obsessive actually, or get really easily triggered. And I'm thinking of one other person that I know who has more anxious or preoccupied attachment style. And when she first was dating her partner, and they have a beautiful, beautiful, secure attached relationship right now. But in the beginning, it was long distance, and she wasn't sure where she stood, and she hadn't had someone that was really consistent or really claiming her for many years. So she became extra sensitive to, is this person going to be there for me? Are they going to abandon me? Do I belong? Is this going to last? And she would become really dysregulated, and all day long she'd be thinking about it, like, am I okay? Is this okay? I'm not sure I want this. I don't know if it's going to work. And then she would kind of push him away a little bit in order to create a sense of safety. And they were able to really come together and understand each other and stay with each other in that experience. And so that's just a nice example of repair. So I'll talk a little bit more about symptoms that people with anxious attachment style might have. Like I said, they can be on edge a lot, so they're really vigilant around, am I going to be abandoned? Am I going to stay loved? And so sometimes this style becomes they can become more people pleasers. So in that, it's like, okay, if I'm what you need me to be, then I'm safe, right? So there's a lot of fixation on other with the anxious attachment style. And that sense of, okay, if you're okay, I'm okay, is what's constantly going on in their system. So they can worry a lot more. They can kind of obsess. These are the people that are like, it's been 2 hours, he hasn't texted me back yet. What's going on? Am I okay? Da da da. So in the dating world, just because there's less security, it can be even more activating for an anxious attachment style. And sometimes that preoccupation or neediness or clinginess or the need for reassurance can eventually push someone away, which isn't always the case, but sometimes when things go on enough, it can push that person away from that kind of behavior. Sometimes they can be a little bit manipulative with, like once they do get the connection that they want from their partner, they can actually withhold love themselves in order to sort of play games, or to create a sense of safety by being like, oh, okay, I don't need you either. But really, they just are constantly needing and wanting that connection. They can definitely give love in order to receive it. And that's a big one, where they might do favors, or they might be what they think that person wants them to be, or are always offering bids for connection. And if that's not returned, they can get kind of angry and resentful. And in relationships, sometimes they're the complainers, and they're always kind of seeing what's wrong. There's a nourishment barrier where even when they are being taken care of and they are being loved and things are consistent, they can't see it, just like the pigeon that stopped, eating these little nuggets after a while. It just became fixated on, when am I going to get the nourishment I need? When am I going to get it? When am I going to get it? And at some point, they just have a challenge receiving the love and the safety and security that is there and that is offered. So one thing that can be really helpful for the partner of someone that's with an anxiously attached person is offering just reassuring statements. I remember my partner doing this in the beginning of our relationship, because I was kind of like, okay, I like my security. I like to know where I am. It's really important to me. And he's pretty securely attached. And he was like, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And then I would have to kind of check, and see. And, with my prefrontal cortex, I'm like, oh yeah, he has been really consistent. Okay, this part of me can relax, as I was getting to know him and trying to see if he was going to be there, or how solid he was. So just reassuring statements can be really helpful, like, you're my person, I'm not going anywhere, you're so important to me, I'm here with you, your needs matter. All of these things can start calming down the attachment system of someone that's anxiously attached. In some ways, it doesn't take much, but they might need a little help receiving that, because they're so used to not getting care or nourishment consistently, especially in their upbringing, that they might need to actually take time and space to receive the ways that people are there for them. and the ways that they are cared for. And that could be from friends, it could be from a partner, it could even be, your pet. You can even go out into imagination where you're like, okay, this is what it might feel like if I had a really stable family, if I always knew I was loved, if I knew love wasn't going to be withheld or it wasn't going to change constantly. For someone that's anxiously attached, it can be really helpful just for them to spend time taking in what is good and what is working. And, thinking of things like, oh yeah, on my partner's best day, this is what they do for me. Oh yeah, they offer to cook for me, or, they anticipate my needs and they do my laundry for me, or they are always telling me that they love me, which can be missed sometimes with these people. So what happens over time when an anxious person is with someone that's securely attached, or if you're learning how to build this solid foundation together, with whatever attachment styles you have, is that eventually their amygdala calms down and they know that they're safe and they know that they belong and they know that they're not going to be abandoned and they know they're going to be taken care of and that they are loved unconditionally. And all of a sudden, things really calm down. Their nervous systems calm down. They're able to go more into play or curiosity. They're able to be more present. There's less worry, less concern. And that's what we're going for. We're going for a secure attachment. And I'll do a video on that in a little bit. But I wanted to speak to one other thing, and that's that the anxious and avoidant attachment styles can be a really tough combo. And it's a combo that happens very often. Sometimes with the anxious attachment style, it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy that they're going to be with someone that's not really available, or they're going to be with someone that's not really available, or they're not going to know where they stand constantly. So they might pick partners that aren't available over and over again until finally they find a way to find more security. So if an anxiously attached person is with someone that can be more avoidant, it's important for them to understand the patterns of the avoidance and that it doesn't actually have to do with them, that they don't have to take it personally, and just having a sense of not kind of smothering the avoidant, which will scare them even more, or not being too needy while still being able to be really connected to what your needs are is really important. Understanding that the time for bidding for connection is not when the avoidant is not in the mood for it, or they're really in their own, focused solo state. So bringing a little bit more consciousness or intentionality to connecting can be really helpful, because every human wants to be connected. It's just about finding our way to each other and understanding each other. So understanding more about your partner's needs and how they work and why can be really helpful in coming together. And I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. This style I really feel for, because they're in a lot of distress and they do need a lot of reassurance. So one thing that's really important for them also is for them to tune into their own needs, especially people with people-pleasing behavior. It's like, what is it that I need in this relationship? What do I really want? And how can I meet that myself? Or how can I notice the ways that it is available? Or how can I kind of calm down my nervous system and just check for signs of safety? Like, here are the ways that I am safe. Here are the ways that I am accepted. Here are the ways that I am okay with whomever. And that can help calm down that anxious attachment system. So that self-care and that self-soothing is really important. Like, honoring that inner child and being like, what do you need, babe? I'm here with you. I'm listening. So that all of the happiness doesn't depend on the people outside here. It's like you're able to find some calm and some peace no matter what's going on in the relationships around you. So being able to rely on yourself, a little bit more self-soothing, is so important. So you're able to be with yourself just as much as you're able to be with other. So the preoccupation with other isn't as intense as you're able to connect to yourself. So I hope that this was helpful. And if you're interested in doing a somatic experiencing session with me or an attachment session with me, I would love to support you. And I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day. And take care.